We're doing it live.
Hey, what's up, guys? Coach Mac, Play Fast Football. We're going to do our 9th episode of the Play Fast podcast featuring a special guest of mine, Colby Grant, who is a fellow teacher at my high school, former player of mine, and the co-host of this Play Fast Football podcast. And it's always a good deal when you get to do a podcast with somebody who is not only a coworker of yours, but he happens to be a former player of yours, and he happens to be an entrepreneur himself. So, Colby, it's been a while, my friend. What's going on?
It has been a while. I feel like you have to reintroduce me because everybody just knows you. And it's kind of like, okay, who's this random person he's talking about?
All right, so Colby Grant is the guy behind the mic, behind the scenes. He does any of the video editing that I've done for PlayFast Football for the clinic, some of the video editing that we did when we had our former Yondo site, which is now a Patreon site. Anything that's ever been edited has been done by Colby. The PlayFast Football podcast that we started doing were all recorded and edited by Colby. All the PlayFast Clinic videos and everything that happened photo wise with PlayFast Clinic was all Colby behind the scenes, and probably part of
I'm like
four or five of my wins in my career as a third string running back was also Colby. So
yes.
That's who Colby Grant is.
Hey, I worked my way to get to that third string.
You did.
I
actually kicked 3 people off the team for you to be third string.
Exactly. I actually at one point was literally the last string. Coach Frawley put me last string, JV, and I think he wanted me to be first string, but he's like, you're gonna have to work for it. Like,
I think he wanted everybody else to quit before you became even on the varsity roster. And if they didn't quit, you never would have played. But they all did quit, so you got to play.
You got to think. Before me, I forgot his name, but if you don't know who I am, you've never seen me. I'm 5'5", I'm like 140 now. But in high school, I was 5'5", 125. Like my whole career.
Typical for me on my roster. That's usually what I play with.
Yeah, but the running back you had before me, I can't remember his name, but he was like maybe 5'7", 230. And then all of them left. And it's kind of like, I have this left. I mean, we did have Williams, but he transferred.
He transferred to Trinity.
Then we had Fritz, which he wasn't that big either, but he left.
Fritz wasn't very big, and then he moved to Flagler, Palm Coast.
So then it's kind of like you had me, and then you had DeMario as well. But DeMario was more of an athlete.
DeMario was actually a quarterback that was an athlete that should have played other positions, but wanted to be a quarterback. So by the time he realized that he was an athlete, not just a quarterback, it was already a little bit too late. So moral of the story is somehow, some way you got in.
Hey, I stayed. That's all that matters. So I made it through. Also, like another advantage of me actually being a player is I have some of your players in my class.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of them can't handle my sarcasm. I'm a very sarcastic person, kind of on the mean side, if you can say that. But I'm like, if you can't handle what I'm saying to you, why are you playing football? Like, I've worked with Coach Mac. He's mean. He's mean to me now, and I'm a grown man. And I told.
But you got to realize the difference. The biggest difference is when you go out on the football field, you actually want to be there. So your ability to handle criticism, sarcasm should be a little bit better. When you're for most high school kids, let's just be honest, when you're in whatever classroom it is, you probably don't want to be there, or at least your motivation to be there is not as high. Like for me, when I played football in high school, the coaches could have been the worst people in the world with the worst sarcasm in the world. I would have put up with everything that they had to say because I needed to play football. So you weren't going to chase me off the football field. As far as English or science or math, the first thing you said could have triggered me because I didn't want to be there in the first place. So,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
that makes
that's
a good point.
well, that and it's the same thing with the kids. You know, a lot of the kids we deal with, we realize that they're always going to tolerate us a little bit more because they want and need, hopefully, to play football. They don't really want to be in your class. So everything you say or do to them is 50 times as bad as me doing it because they don't a lot of times want to be with you, not because of you, but because of the educational setting. They don't want to be there to begin with, but football, they actually, most of them at least, want to be there. So they have to deal with what we do.
Yeah. No, that makes a good point. I guess I didn't think of it that way. I mean, I think sometimes I have, but I think with the sarcasm, it's kind of like, okay, they're throwing shots. It's like, okay, well, let's throw
You
shots
should
back.
you should be able, you played for me. They understand you should be able to handle people throwing shots at you. I'm going to do it all the time. That's just who I am. It's how I am. But
And I,
but again, you got to understand, like, when it was you playing running back for me, you can handle shots because you want and need to play running back. You really don't have a choice but to handle what I'm saying. The kids that don't want to be in your classroom, they don't need to handle or deal with you throwing shots because they don't want to be there to begin with. So it's either, hey, I just get an F or a D because I don't want to be there anyways, or I try and get out of this class. It's just football is such a different realm because, all the kids that you're dealing with really choose to be there. Like, I didn't ask any of my kids to play football. I didn't ask you to play football. You came out to play football. So if you want to play football for me, you have to deal with what I bring to the table. That's the difference.
yeah, no, valid point.
And that's why,
Valid.
as a teacher, you're in such a bad place with some of these kids because they don't want to be there. They have no desire to be there. And it's even harder for you to motivate them to do anything because they come to the table with nothing. At least for me, those same kids come to the table with something because they want to play football. So it's every bit as hard for me to motivate them as it is for you. But I at least have the advantage of they want to be doing what I'm doing and they don't want to be where you are.
Yeah, and it's as you said, we don't really have anything. And for teachers, I mean, we've talked about it. The hardest part is when football season ends, and that's kind of like, well, they really have no motivation unless they're a multi-sport type athlete.
Yeah. And
Then it just continues. But if
but here's the
there's,
hardest part for a football coach. During the season, we have the ability to keep these kids connected for you. And we want to use that as much as we can. But when I get messages from teachers about behavior assignments, I sometimes, as a coach, want to respond back and say, hey, by the way, can you do some extra tackling reps in your class? Because he's having a hard time tackling and he can't understand how to play these coverages. So if you get done early in your class, could you possibly work on these coverages with him? Because really, in essence, that's the same thing teachers are saying to us. You can't get them to perform in your classroom. Can I hold football over their head to do a little bit more to make the classroom more important? And as a coach, I'm 100% on board with that. I get it. I've always been willing to help teachers, but sometimes when teachers say he just doesn't understand vocabulary and he just doesn't understand math or science, I want to email back and say, hey, you realize he really doesn't understand how to tackle anybody either. So
or his
should I,
plays,
or his plays, assignments, or how to block, or should I be emailing that to you to say, hey, by the way, could you possibly find some time in your class to help him go over, you know, uh, even right Vikings, H Reed North?
because you could use the excuse that teachers are really versatile on teaching strategies to remember
Correct.
things. Not
I mean,
saying that, not saying you
we
can't,
could go
but
either way with that, and obviously it's a thin line. Coaches are supposed to be there to support teachers, and I've always been that way in my career. But after doing this for 21 years now, sometimes I sit back and I'm like, hey, what if I emailed you and said, listen, I I will handle that on my end. I appreciate your email, but could you find time to teach him how to run a post or a corner, or because he really struggles with that? What would a teacher say?
I'm not the football coach.
Right.
That's
Well,
exactly what they would say.
I'm not the English teacher. I can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
So no, I mean I get that. All right. So well, we kind of lost. I mean, we didn't really lose track, but it was good kind of recap of
It's called a
all of
segue,
this.
Colby.
Yeah,
It's called a
perfect.
segue.
Yes, we're gonna jump right into why we haven't been recording because you've made it very known that I am very techie.
Yeah.
I'm in the now. I'm very versatile in what I do, and it's kind of like okay, COVID hit I think in March,
Yep.
and that was the
Or
last
at
time.
least when we knew about it.
Yeah, and then we shut down, and then it was kind of like we just the podcast just kind of just stopped because obviously we couldn't really go anywhere technically, like everything was locked down, but we couldn't go to the school. People didn't want to meet up because of COVID, safety reasons obviously. But I mean, I know they're thinking, well, why didn't they just Zoom? Like everybody
Right.
does
Well,
Zoom.
the easy answer is as much as you are techie and everything else, I think everybody that's been with me for a little while knows that I'm not. So my YouTube videos are not even edited. They're one shot, press play, press stop. I'm talking to you right now with my Bobby Brown headset on. It's my prerogative to use this headset. So,
You sound
I've
really
got to
clear.
I mean, everybody that all the things that I've done online, Zoom wise, people have said that it sounds really clear. But I have um, an old fashioned tower and a desktop. I don't have a fancy laptop. I don't have a new laptop. So from the technology end, it's not really your side of it. It's just that for me, on my side of it, I'm not a tech person. I did some Zoom calls over the break just because it became what everybody was doing and it was a way to not
Yeah,
lose your mind. But I'm not a tech person. This is really not what I like doing, how I like interacting. Um, and the fact that we couldn't get on campus together where we were doing all of our podcasts and all that is kind of the deal. But at the same time, you were going in a route with Grant Tutoring and Jacksonville Entrepreneurs and Awkwardly Surprising podcasts. You were doing your own thing, which from a technology standpoint, you had the ability to do, and you're very good at it. And I was kind of doing my own thing with some YouTube videos. And then I did a lot of, actually, for me over the pandemic, I did way more Twitter work, advertising for Dome Hats and Baker Sports and a couple other people because that was really for me that was more of a strong suit, for me than it was to get on Zoom calls. But I did a couple Zoom calls. I did a Zoom call with coaches in Germany. I did two, um, however you want to call them, chalk talks, chalk wars, whatever they are. And so, I mean, I did some things technology wise. I did some Patreon videos once I figured out how to do it on my own. But um, being at work and being on the same campus with my office and your classroom, and depending on the time of year, especially when it was non-football season, being able to just do it one afternoon at 2:30 when we were both done with work made it so easy. So the Zoom setting, as easy as it is, once I figured out how to do it, um, with everything you had going on and some other things I had going on, it was just like, you know what? I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if
yeah.
I don't know if it
It's
looks the same. Obviously, it's me talking to you, but I just felt like live with us in the same room was a little bit better than the Zoom stuff. I felt like the Zoom stuff was a way of saying, "Hey, let's keep up trying to be status quo. Let's try and act like there's not a pandemic going on."
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, we had the capability to do it. You obviously, you know what you're doing. It was just a matter of me figuring out. But
Yeah, I mean, I
I think
think
it was
with
good. I honestly think it was good to take a break for a little while.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. I felt like, we school got shut down, and from my perspective, looking from your perspective is I know you're always coaching, you're always away from your family, you're always in the field house, always doing something. I was like, maybe he just wants a break and be with his family for once. I don't know how
That
the
was
football life goes,
that
but
was actually part of it. That was actually part of it.
so
The first the beginning when it happened in March, and we're 2 months away from spring football, and I was in the middle of weightlifting season, and when it first happened, it was like, what the hell's going on? Are we going to be back in school in 2 weeks, a month? Um, and then as it started going on, and then to be honest with you, once spring football got shut down, there was a little bit of a shock and awe to say, what the hell am I going to do? And then there was also a little bit of um, a revelation in a way, if you want to speak that way, to say, you know what? It's for the first time in a long time. It's good to be home doing nothing.
yeah,
It's good to have no responsibility. And now, when you take that into consideration, my daughter's dance classes got shut down and we couldn't go to Disney. And, there weren't a lot of the things that I would or would like to be able to do as a dad. Um, but at the same time, it was just nice to say, hey, you know what? I don't have anything else to do, because the last 20 years of my life has been football season. And after football season, it's weightlifting, and it's off season, and then it's spring football, and then it's summer. And so, as shocking as it was to be hit with this pandemic that we all have no idea what the hell's going on, once we realized that we weren't going back to school last year, it was kind of like, you know what? I'm kind of okay with this right now, because I need a little bit of time to do nothing
yeah,
and
and
have nothing.
that's what I thought. I didn't want to I my perspective was I know the coach. I don't know the coach life, but I've seen it, I've heard
Yeah.
about it, and I feel like taking your break. Like in my case, I'm always moving. Like I'm always
See,
moving,
but your
but
case is a little bit different. Obviously, you had a newborn son, and
which
some
I
things
think,
going on in your life that were different. But to me, if I wasn't coaching, I probably would have been in the same boat you were in. You were probably just trying to figure out, how the hell am I going to stay busy? What am I
well,
going to do? You
once
know,
school actually started, that was a whole nother story.
right. But I mean, if I wasn't coaching and didn't live the lifestyle that I've lived the last 20 something years, I probably would have been thinking about things to say, hey, what the hell am I going to do to stay occupied, to stay busy? Mine was the flip side. It was finally a chance for me to go, hey, this is pretty cool. I have nothing to do. I can play
Yeah,
golf. I played a ton of golf for the first time in a long time. And I played in money games at the local club that I'm at, not major gambling games, but small money games, to where I was able to do the things that a lot of the older guys in their 50s that are retired or business owners that play 4 or 5 days a week, all the things that I couldn't ever do as a football coach, I was able to all of a sudden do. And it just felt good for a little while, at least, to
yeah.
be like, hey, I have nothing going on. I can
We-
I can do some things with my daughters. I can do some things with my family. I can play golf. I can practice golf. I have nothing. So it felt good for a little while, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I got bored after a while.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
no
I
question.
we did a lot of walking. Like we walked our neighborhood literally like 5 times a day
Yeah.
because it's just like what I mean. He was how old was he? He was like 6 months, so it was still like you just have a baby. You
You're
just
still trying to figure it out.
yeah, you just
You're trying to figure out when he's up, when he's sleeping, when he's hungry, when he's not, and
yeah, making
trying to
sure the
figure out how to
schedule's
get
good.
back into your life. And
Yeah, so I
then all
mean,
of a sudden you get
to
hit
an
with something. It's like, shit, I don't know how to live the next hour.
yeah, so I mean, to an extent, like it was good to have that family time and seeing him grow up and
Yeah.
being there for his, first walk. Just everything that most people would miss because of work, I got to see because what else is there to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's why like just taking a good break. And I think coming back now, I think it's one of those like we had our break, we got back to school. Coming back to school for me was difficult because of all the new things, IEPs and all that.
Yeah.
And I don't like putting too much on my plate, which, sounds crazy because I already have. But I think now is kind of like the perfect time to come back and, get more consistent with it. But you did have kind of a monumental moment last Friday. We're shooting this on the 28th, so it was where's my calendar? 23rd. You got your 100th win as a high school football coach. Now, my question is two questions actually leading up to this, and this is to any coaches that are listening as well. Do you remember your very first win, and did you keep something for it to remind you, like business owners, besides me, keep their very first dollar, they put in a little frame and they put on the walls like, this is my very first dollar. Do coaches keep the ball? Do they keep the helmet? Do they keep something to remind them this is my first one?
So I'm gonna say yes and no. When I took my first coaching job, I was 25, 26 maybe. Never really thought of it as this is my first win. It's monumental. I kind of in a weird way because of how I've been my whole life. I kind of expected to win. Um, as hard as winning is in high school football and in coaching, uh, for me, growing up athletically, and the way I was raised, winning was an expectation. It wasn't really something I ever thought about and said, this is an accomplishment. And now that I look back on it, that I'm kind of glad you brought that question up because I can't tell you honestly my first win. I know my first year in 1999 at Ridgeview, we were 3-7. Um, I remember the record vehemently. But as far as that first win to say who we beat, I don't know who that was. And I know that there was a game ball signed by all the players, but I think I gave that game ball to Dr. Roberts, our principal. And the reason I say that is because I think I gave it to her as a monumental thing to say thank you for hiring me. Um, Thank you for believing in me. I honestly felt like I'm gonna win. In due time, I'm gonna win plenty of games. Never really wanted the ball for my first win, uh, but I know that we had a ball signed and given to Dr. Roberts because that was my way of saying thank you for believing in me, which was very important to me. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't remember the actual school we beat for my first win. Uh, and again, the reason I say that is because I expected to win. I knew that I was going to win. Never really sat back to cherish how important. If I had to go back now, 21 years later and 100 wins later, hell yeah, I'd have something signed and done. And but the first one just wasn't really a thought. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
It was like, hey, I'm pretty sure I'm going to win. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be good at this. I don't know any other way to think about it. So this is just, hey, it's a first win. It's great, but hell, there's going to be a lot more.
Yeah.
But I
And
can
plus,
tell you, I do have my first. If I can lean over here somewhere. Oops. Let me figure out how to do this. Put this headset on if I can. This is worth the podcast experience right here.
he is trying to get something.
Okay, so if I can do this while I have the headset on, see this collared shirt, Colby?
Yeah.
This was a gift from my wife. It is the actual coaching shirt that I wore when we won our first district championship in 2008. at Lake City, Columbia. So this is that shirt
Not
doused in
even washed.
Gatorade. Nope, no, not washed, not nothing. That shirt doused in Gatorade, um, all the dirt, sweat, whatever else you want to come out in a frame from my wife as a Christmas gift. So I do have stuff like that, um, because that one was certainly. Uh, sorry, while I try and put it back. Um, that one was monumental because now you're talking about district championships, and Lake City was the all-time winningest program in Florida, and Ridgeview as a new school, even though we didn't win a district till 2008. Um, I really don't think anybody ever thought Ridgeview was going to be a football school. It was obviously the job I took because a friend of mine hired me to come down from New York, and um, but I don't know if anybody ever thought it was going to be a football neighborhood, a football school. So just a culmination of 9 years of work, and trying to build a program from the ground up. And it just, that one was monumental in a lot of ways. So I do have things like that. But as far as my first win, no, I can't even tell you who it was.
Oh, I'm curious to see if other. Well, I feel like new coaches now probably, they have Instagram, they have Facebook, so obviously it's going to be.
Everything is so much more documented
Yeah.
now.
So back then, it probably wasn't. Just some
Well,
coaches, it was just like it's not that big of a deal.
you back then there was still video, and there was there was a lot of things to document it, not like social media now.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, you had the
so
newspaper.
yeah, and it just, I don't know, it's just something that I never really thought about. I didn't think about my first win because I thought the first game I coached I was going to win. To be honest with you.
You got to have that winning mentality that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant. But anybody that's listening, he won a district title the year after I left. And all those players.
Yeah, there's a reason for that.
There is a reason. All the players were just like, hey, you should just fail and just come back next year. I was like, I'm not doing my senior year again. But no, yeah. So that was something that, I wish I was a part of because I'm still friends with all those people now. But I still had my good run. I'm happy with it. I probably wouldn't even been starting. Well, let's see.
You never know.
Oh, I guess we'll never know. All right, so we talked about like did we ever worry about football not happening, especially with spring getting canceled, but like even about like coming close to fall, because I know like every school, I know it kept getting, I don't want to say out of control, but social media, people getting tired of being at home, other states, schools opening, football season starts earlier in some states in Florida, so you see other states starting their football, and we're just sitting here on your pins and needles like thinking, okay, are we going to have a season? So did you ever worry about, okay, so I don't know what state started, because I remember seeing the thing on Twitter saying this is the very first high school football game during COVID. And once you saw that, did you feel like, okay, if they're playing, we're definitely going to have a season this year?
I definitely thought when I saw that game that if they're doing it, we can do it. But at the same time, while they were doing it, the Big Ten was shut down and the Pac-12 was shut down, and we had no answer from the SEC and the ACC. So, I'm looking at that in high school, and I'm saying to myself, obviously we can do it, but if these multi-million-dollar operations aren't doing it, maybe there's something more to it that I really don't know about. And that was always the to me, that was the driving force to say, yes, there's certain states that are doing it. Yes, there's high school games that are going on, but these big time businesses are choosing not to do it. Something's out there that I really don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, even when it first happened in March with March Madness happening, and I think the Ivy League was the first one to cancel, and then it kind of just trickled down. But and I think with the Big Ten, and I feel like I talked to someone about it, is they had the right intention, but I think they jumped too early. They kind of wanted to be like how the basketball team was, where they're going to say, oh, we're canceling now because, we don't want to be that team that gets everybody sick and COVID. So they jumped the gun, which to an extent, that's what you're supposed to do, because if hypothetically speaking, college football got shut down, they would be getting praise. But since all the teams are just like, no, we're going to play, they look like they have pie on their face. So, I think the Big Ten had the right intention. They wanted to be the teams or the school that wanted to not play because of COVID, but in the end, they kind of look.
Well, the problem is there's no one governing sanctioning body, even though it's the NCAA. So some conferences are trying to play and some aren't. And, the Big Ten makes their decision and catches hell about it because the SEC and the ACC and some other people say they're going to play. And then all of a sudden the Big Ten has to go back and look and say, well, why did we make this decision when they're playing? But here's like, an interesting way to look at it. So where we are in our neck of the woods, University of Florida shut down operations for 2 to 3 weeks, lost a couple games.
I thought they just pushed it back because it was Kentucky, right?
Well, no, they were originally supposed to play LSU, and that got
Uh,
suspended, and then the Missouri game. So it's been at least 2 games now that have been suspended or postponed, right? And now the Big Ten, after all the pressure, everything goes on to say, why aren't we playing football? The Big Ten decides to start football again later than everybody else, but they're going to play football. And they come back this week and they have this triumphant return to football. And Indiana has this amazing overtime win against Penn State. And this week, Wisconsin has suspended activities and they won't play Nebraska. So I really don't know where to sit, what to say. Obviously, a bunch of conferences and schools have been able to come back and do it full, but other schools in those conferences have had to shut down things. And the Big Ten was able to come back and save grace and say, we're going to play football. And now a week into their football season, a program has shut down. So I really don't know where to sit on that fence, because it's great to have college football. It's great to see it. Yes, it can be done. But at the same time, at the highest level with the best testing practices available, teams are shutting down.
Yeah, and so far the only organization that has been able to go through something like that without any positive cases is the NBA. But with the NBA, you could say it's easier because there's less staff. I think that they did it at Disney World, so they do have enough places to hold multiple games at the same time. So like with football, even NFL, there's not just like one place to hold multiple games.
I think the NBA had some issues. I just don't think they were out there like everybody else's issues.
Yeah, you think they were able to keep it hush?
I don't want to say they would keep it hush because I don't want to say that there's a conspiracy going on, but
Yeah,
I think they had some issues that just didn't get noticed as much as some of these other issues, and
that's true.
they were able to finish the year.
And what about this? This is off topic. Kind of, it's still sports, but even like with the LA Dodgers, they just won their World Series. A player, third baseman, got tested positive in the third inning, so he had to go to the locker room or he had to be isolated or whatever. But since they won, I don't know if you saw that. They obviously LA won the championship. The guy that tested positive came out of the dugout and celebrated with his teammates.
The issue that he's going to have is I believe he broke compliance with security. So I believe, I believe security, once he was quarantined or isolated, whatever you want to call it, I believe security was trying to not let him go out on the field to celebrate. How you can stop something like that when the guy's worked his whole life to get to that moment.
Yeah.
I see both sides of the fence, but I think the issue he's really going to have is the fact that I think security was trying to do a certain job that he broke, you know.
Yeah. Even if you're security, let's say, I mean, hypothetically, you're security, you still don't want to risk yourself into getting COVID as well.
Well, not only COVID, but you don't want to risk your job. But I can tell you this much. Um, I don't know how old some of those guys are, what their situation is, but if I'm security at a stadium and I've been security at that stadium all year and I know who this player is and they win the World Series, there's a good chance my job's on the line and I let him go on the field.
Yeah.
Just because I've been around athletics my whole life and I know what he did to get there with his teammates. And, I'm not saying that I don't value the seriousness of Corona or COVID. That has nothing to do with it from a job standpoint, not a health standpoint.
Yeah.
If we're
No, I
just
mean,
talking about jobs, I will be the security officer that has to go into the office and say, "Hey, sorry, I let Justin Turner on the field. My bad."
yeah.
If
No,
if if coronavirus is off the table, and I know obviously he wasn't supposed to be out there because of coronavirus, but what I'm saying is, if he was somebody that was kicked out of the club that I let back in the club, for that reason, then I'm willing to go in front of the owner and say, I screwed up. Deal with me how you need to deal with me. I let him back on the field.
yeah. I mean, another excuse, which I don't know if it is even a valid excuse, is that he did get tested positive during, I think, the third or fifth inning. So some people are like, well, he's already been around this whole team the whole game, pretty
Could
much.
be. Yeah, it could
So I
be.
mean, that's another reason why maybe he was like, well, I've been around them. So I mean, that's just something that I saw since we were talking about Corona or COVID or however you want to say it. Um, but another thing, speaking of COVID, is the clinic. You had your first clinic last year. It seems like it was forever ago, but it was actually
January.
the beginning of this year. Um, Obviously, it all depends on how where we are with the vaccine, or if we have a vaccine, um, what's going to happen. Obviously, Florida and Georgia were the first two states to really just open up. Um, so obviously, I mean, you still have to do your practicing social distance and wearing your mask. Um, but do you see a play fast football clinic coming up, or are we looking to just wait it out? Or are we going to try to do something different this year if we can't get a hotel, um, or just not have that many people there? So limited the tickets so only certain people can go.
I don't know if we can do something different. I know that there's some other companies out there doing some different things. Um, I don't think we have the capability. I don't think we have the funding. I don't think we have the technological ability to do other things that you would want to do. Um, I want to say that there's going to be a clinic. Uh, it may be April or May and not January, but right now I want to say that there's going to be a clinic. It's going to be an in-person clinic. It's going to be hopefully at the same venue. The problem we'll have with that venue is if we do get back to normal, April, May at that place on the ocean will be a huge wedding um,
Yeah,
venue that we may. One of the reasons we were able to draw that place in January is they can't get weddings every weekend in January, so they are looking for other things to do. April, May, they're probably going to get a wedding every weekend, so it's going to be tough to get that venue. But we want to have something after getting it off the ground and doing it for the first time. Once we got it off the ground, and I know me and you had talked afterwards about all the things you did and all the things we want to do the next year. When you get it off the ground and it's successful and you get it rolling, you want to keep that momentum going and you want to keep that ball rolling. So the last thing the last thing we ever wanted to do was not have one. Uh, but once situations worked out the way they did this year, we knew we weren't going to have one. But the goal is to have one in April or May. Summer would be the latest, depending on where the hell the world is by the time summer comes around. But I don't think we'll have an alternate,
Solution.
not an
Uh,
alternate solution, and not a technological solution that some of these other companies, like some of these other big companies like Glacier and Nike, they're doing some more things online and some more things that um, they have the bankroll to do. And, um, not that we couldn't figure out technologically, especially you could figure it out, but
already have
I just
something.
don't know if I don't know if we've got the funding to do something like that full bore with no hiccups. I would
Yeah.
just worry about all the mistakes we would make. And so we want to do it live, and it just won't be in January.
Yeah. I mean, the only other option that I've thought of that would work would be the Zoom, to where you can do like multiple people, like over 1,000 seats or something like that. Um, you can have different speakers. There's different rooms that people can join. I've never done it, but can't be that hard. But I mean, that's just something that probably the other places have done. It's just something that, I mean, obviously we don't want to resort to that. I don't even want to think about doing it that way, because obviously it's better. Everything's better in person, especially with a clinic. I mean, you have coaches that can mingle together, get to know each other, pass plays. So,
Sorry, cats. I
yeah,
had to let my cat out. Um, I think, Colby, to be honest with you, I think some of those places are in a situation where they have to do. They're so big that they have to do something, and they now have the technological ability, like Glacier Clinics. Glacier Clinics was doing these vault for years. The last couple of years, they've been doing these vaults where they have been videotaping their sessions and videotaping a lot of things and putting um, PDF files of notes and videotaping webinars and clinics. And that's part of how they were able to charge people what they were able to charge them, is because not only do you get the live clinics, but you have the ability to have all this stuff archived in a vault. So I feel like they're in a position where they have no choice but to do that. So
yeah,
they're so big, and they're such a large company with such an expectation that if they can't do live clinics, now they have to take what they've already been doing online technologically and bring it to the next level so that people can still have clinics.
yeah,
We're not there yet. We're so small in nature with what we're doing that we would like to do something else if we had to, but I don't want to screw up whatever it is we do. They've
yeah,
been doing online stuff. They are a large company that has kind of a monopoly over the clinic circuit, so to speak. So they have the ability to do stuff like that. I would be afraid of screwing that up because we don't have enough monetary backing and technological backing to do it the way it needs to be done correctly. Um, so at this point, going into year two, I'd rather delay, postpone what we're doing rather than come up with another option. I can do Zoom clinics and get a coach here or there to speak about things, and we can do that to tide people over and to keep learning going. But to do that as a clinic replacement to me is just not a good idea.
yeah. No, that makes sense. Um, but I mean, obviously, it's just like a waiting game, and just hoping this passes as soon as possible, so everything's back to normal. So, going back to your 100th win, I actually went to the game. Well, I go to most home games, and I didn't know you were going for your 100th win. I was just there as I'm usually there, and I had to leave at halftime um, because tw- it was
28-7.
7, 28
28-7.
7. 28-7. I was like, there's no chance they could lose. I mean, there's no chance. So I'm gonna leave because one, I have to. So, but I get on Instagram and Facebook or Twitter and I see it was your 100th win. Now going into the game because you played Gainesville East Side and they're usually pretty good.
Yeah.
Like I don't think we played them when I was there, but usually they're very good. I think last year they had the quarterback that's going to be featured on QB1.
Yep.
That was the game that it was kind of like a district game. But did you go and like watching film was like I'm probably going to get my 100th one tonight, or did you just like I don't want to jinx myself type thing because you do have a young
Um,
team?
yeah. Going in, they had not won a game yet this year. They were struggling a little bit on film. When you watch them on film with some of the things they were doing on offense and defense, you could see that they were struggling a little bit. So, when it's a monumental moment like that, um, you're kind of trying to put all that on the back burner to say, look, I'm going to prepare for this game the way I always prepare, and I'm going to make sure I take care of everything I need to take care of. And um, going in, I felt confident that we could perform, and if we perform to the level that we were capable of, we should be able to win that game just because of what was on film, their record. Um, but at the same time, I've been doing this for 21 years in high school, and you just have no idea. We have 17-year-old kids that on a Friday, if they broke up with their girlfriend or something happened at their house, they might completely shut down for the next 24 hours. And if they're the center snapping the ball, or if they're the quarterback throwing or handing the ball off or calling plays, or if they're the safety that has to put us in coverages, that whole thing could go south real quick just because of how fragile sometimes high school kids can be with surrounding environments and things in their life. So, I felt good going in that if we did what we were supposed to do, played the way we were supposed to play, that I would get my 100th win. But that makes it to me even more like this is probably weird for some people, but I get more nervous, anxious for games like that than I do when we're playing somebody really good. So when we're playing somebody really, really good, I really don't get that nervous. I don't get that uptight. I feel like if we do what we're supposed to do and execute, we have a chance to win this game. But if we don't, we weren't supposed to. When we go play somebody that's not that good, I get really uptight, anxious, and nervous because we're supposed to win.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the 100th one, this is like a two-part kind of question that I thought about is who all knew going into the game that it was your 100th win? Like, did the players know? Did obviously you knew, but who told you, like, hey, do you know you could be going for your 100th win? And who's keeping track of all these wins for you?
Um, it's funny. It actually came out in the newspaper. Somebody in the newspaper, whoever is in charge of that stuff, put all the things together. My wins at Ridgeview, my wins at Baker, my wins at Orange Park, and it came out on Tuesday or Wednesday of last week in the high school section that I would be vying for my 100th win. Mike Harrison, our AD at Orange Park, texted me a picture from the newspaper and said, "Did you know anything about this?" I texted him back and said, "I thought I had already got there. Didn't really think that this was that week." Um, so, um, you know, after that point, that was on a Tuesday. After that point, the kids never, to my knowledge, the kids never found out until we played. I certainly didn't mention anything. My coaches, if they don't read the paper, didn't know anything about it because I didn't mention anything until I think I mentioned something on Thursday after our walkthrough. Um, I think in a text message I sent a picture of the article from the paper and I said, "Hey, no pressure, guys." Um, So I think as of Thursday night, my coaches knew, but we never brought it up with the players.
Yeah, because I feel like our principal that's, really into football because he used to be a football coach. I feel like if he, I don't know if he knew or not ahead of time either, but I feel like if he would have known, he would have put it over the announcements, which that's where I usually would have heard it, but he didn't say anything either.
I don't think he knew just because if he doesn't read the newspaper, he's not going to know. I know myself and my athletic director chose not to make it a big deal because we didn't want to make it any different than any other game.
Yeah.
So I think he found out later in the week, but I don't think he knew when we knew. Um, and I don't think he wanted to put any undue duress on me or anybody else. So I feel like he didn't announce it during the week to say, hey, come out to the home game and check out Coach McPherson, the possibility of Coach McPherson winning his 100th game. I don't think he wanted to promote it like that and put any undue pressure on. So, once we did win, obviously in his newsletter this week and in his weekly reminders, it was in there. So I feel like once we did win, he knew about it and he knew what an accomplishment is what it was. But I feel like he didn't want to preempt it or build it up. I
Yeah.
think as a former coach and an AD, I think he knows what we do going into games, and I think he knows that we don't really want or need anything else in there to screw it up. So I feel like they did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I didn't know until I got on Twitter, or Facebook or whatever. So that's, I mean, I texted you that morning anyways, just to see, because I don't even think when I texted you, I knew. I just texted you to make sure that you guys won because I was like, I left at halftime. I was just making sure you guys won.
You never
Um,
know.
exactly. High school football, you never know. Um, and you did get coach of the week. You had someone from the Jaguars come out and then someone from Whataburger.
Yep.
So was that your first coach? I'm pretty sure that's not your first coach of the week,
No.
obviously. So with the Whataburger check, is that strictly for Whataburger or what do you do with that check? Like what when they present you a check, is it going to the school? Is it a Coach Mack check that he can go to Whataburger and spend all that money there? Or like is it what is it? Like how does
I wish it was a Coach Mac check. It is not. Even if it was a $1,500 for the rest of your life to use at Whataburger with your daughters and your wife, and that would have been fine. But it's a check that goes to the school. Um, it'll be $1,500 made out to Orange Park High School. I will then take that check and put it into our football account, and we will do with it what we see fit. If we feel like it's 6 new helmets, then that's what we'll do. If we feel like it's reupholstering benches in the weight room, which I know you know because you like to lift sometimes, our benches need reupholstered. If it's reupholstering benches, then that's what I'll do. If it's ordering 1,000 pounds of bumpers, that's what I'll do. If it's getting 3 new bars, that's what I'll do. I will sit down with my staff, my AD, and my players, and I will determine where that $1,500 will best be spent. It'd be real easy to come back and say that $1,500 is going to be spent on new uniforms. Well, no, that's not the case. That $1,500 is going to be spent on shirts and apparel for the kids that played the game for me to win my 100th game. No, that's not the case. That $1,500 is Orange Park High School, Orange Park football, and we will do what we see fit to benefit Orange Park football.
Yeah, I only ask because I feel like most coaches would know, but just like an average person like me, like I I just I
You're not you're not the only one. I've had 10 different people that have asked me, "Hey, is that check to Coach Mack?" No, it's
uh
not.
okay. I
That's
didn't
a
feel
common question, believe it or not.
okay. I don't want to feel like an idiot because I mean you see coaches get checks and I feel like maybe a younger coach getting into it thinking, oh, if I'm coach of the week, I can get all this money for myself. It's like, well,
Hell yeah.
slow
Hell
your
yeah.
roll. It's not what it's for. Um, so I mean, that's for the first episode back from Corona. I think we kind of hit every mark coming up to your 100th win. And I think some coaches, older coaches that listen to this podcast, try to think back on your first win if you can remember it. Did you think you were going to win? Did you save something? And I guess for younger coaches, it's one of those, you're going to remember it because we live in a social media era to where you're going to post it, you're going to talk about it. I'm going for my first win. Up, I lost. Okay, I'm going for my first one again. So that was I'm kind of curious if coaches even think about that, or even like once you get to your 200th win or your 1,000th win, like with you, you have your wife gave you the present of your first district win. Like, do you think you'd have that same feeling if you won another district title? Would it have that same like emotion to it?
Another district title, which I did win a second one after the first one, and it was nowhere near as monumental as the first one. But to me, it's kind of funny because some people have said this to me, and it makes a lot of sense. 100 wins. I've been doing this for 20 years. 100 wins is a great milestone. Really, when you look at it, it's only 5 wins a year, which we play 10 games a year. So really, when you look at it, I'm around 500. I think to me, the better milestone is being in this business for 21 years. You've been a teacher for 4 or 5, and you wonder if you're going to, way longer, elementary teacher. So 10 years, how long?
Yeah, 10. This is my 10th.
All right. So this is your 10th year teaching, and you wonder if you're going to make it to 11.
Every day.
Every day, right? So the 100 wins was a great milestone, but at the same time, when I really look back at it, the fact that I've been able to do this for 21 years is a bigger milestone. The fact that I never got chased out of coaching by parents, stress, whatever you want to look at, and I'm still doing it 21 years later is a bigger milestone. To me, the fact that I've been at 3 schools in 21 years is a big milestone. So 100 wins was great. It was satisfying. It was monumental. But when I look back, I think doing what I'm doing the way I've done it for 21 years, that's probably more impressive than 100 wins.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious about like the other coaches that win so much. Like, how do they stay motivated knowing like you just keep winning? And I know coaches that are really good at winning and they have good players, they have good staff. Not saying that you don't, but just that you just constantly winning. It's kind of like, how do you stay motivated and do these wins actually, or are they actually satisfying type thing? Like it's not really kind of like a challenge per se.
I think first part of your question, I think winning is better than losing, and I think that motivates enough people to come out and coach every week to make sure that you get the result you want because it's better than the other result. And as far as your other point, when even in high school, winning really isn't always easy. Winning football games is not easy. And I think you get to a point as a coach after a while, at least for me, doing this for 20 years. We used to, when I was younger, if we played a game that I thought we were supposed to win handily and we didn't play well and we won the game by 2 touchdowns, I would just go off in the locker room. And the following Monday and Tuesday, I would just go off and try to make everybody understand that I am not real happy. And years later, and now 21 years into my career, kind of like the East Side game the other night, which we were winning 28-7 at halftime, and then we end up winning 28-14. I could have went into that locker room after the game and just completely lost my shit, gone bananas about not finishing, not playing 4 quarters. But I've now come to the fact that I realize that winning's not easy. And when you win, you need to enjoy it. Like, I know that we didn't play our best. I know that we made a lot of mistakes. Our kids know that we made a lot of mistakes. Do we really need to address that on Friday night after a win? Or do we address it on Monday and just enjoy the weekend after winning? Winning's not easy. It's I know sometimes in high school it's predetermined with who plays who, and certain schools play other schools and they're always going to win, but it's still not easy to run a high school program, to get kids to do what you need them to do, to get them here at practice every day. The shit's not easy. And I think when you sit back as a coach, you realize that it's not easy and you start to appreciate wins more.
Yeah. No, makes a lot of sense. And I mean, that's a good way to kind of end this, episode as, we're coming back. We'll try to get this out, just get episodes out on the regular. We don't want to like put a stamp or a day of every week of what day we're going to get out, but there won't be this long of a drought anymore. We're finally getting our feet under each other. So, I mean,
well, the good thing is we get this one back. We get it, you know, um, back to a regular setting. Football season for me is ending soon, whether we win or lose. So I'll get to a point where I have more free time. You'll have whatever time you have between school and your personal life. So I think this was a good time for this episode to come out because we will be going back to normal soon. Maybe not every week, but maybe every 2 weeks.
yeah,
Football will be over for me, which means I have more free time. And after a football season, just like we did last year, we'll have a ton of things to talk about. We'll have a bunch of things with our season to talk about. We'll have a bunch of things with how different the season was because of the pandemic. We'll have a bunch of things to talk about off season going into next season. And then, this time of year when it rolls around, the great thing for this podcast is they're going to play the Masters in 2 weeks. So the next time we do a podcast, I can talk about the Masters and golf.
did I ever
It's
tell you the story about my mom and Tiger Woods?
no.
Oh, I can tell you that when we do that.
Well, we'll save it for the next episode.
Yeah, we'll save it.
But we've got that coming up, and Survivor Series is coming up. We've talked about wrestling on this podcast before, so Survivor Series is coming up, and then Royal Rumble will come up, and then WrestleMania will come up. So, a lot of good things going on, a lot of things to look forward to, and I think this was a good icebreaker to get back in, and we'll be back on the regular soon.
So, all right, guys. Well, I don't even remember how we ended it, or how did you end it?
Well, Colby, you can't play well, or you won't play well until you play fast. So we'll see you guys next time.
Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. So I'll
Chop it up.